Alright, what's going on you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. So I thought for this video it would be fun to take a closer look at one of the more controversial decisions in bodybuilding from last year, 2021. And that is going to be Nick Walker taking 5th and Hunter Labrada taking 4th at last year's Olympia. Now I was thinking about what were the most controversial decisions of the year, and I was thinking about potentially the Arnold Classic where you had Steve Kuklo wind up in 3rd and Ian Valliere wind up in 2nd. I was thinking about Hadi Chupin maybe getting robbed at the Olympia and taking 3rd. I even thought about maybe Sean Clarita winning the Legion Sports Festival as a 212 competitor, beating guys like Regan Grimes and Sergio Oliva Jr. But I think by far the decision that has elicited the largest fan response that I've seen on social media was Nick Walker taking 5th and Hunter Labrada taking 4th. So in this video, I want to take a closer look at both of those two guys, the HD pictures, compare them side by side, go through all 8 poses, the mandatory poses, and give my opinion on each one. So the first thing we need to do there is go and look at the scorecards from that Olympia. So Hunter Labrada in 4th place, and again, just a brief recap, if you don't know how bodybuilding scores work, the lower score wins. Your score correlates to your placing, and obviously the lower placing you have, and by lowest, I mean closest to first as possible, because a score of 1 point means a judge voted you for 1st place. So you want to have a low score to have a low corresponding placing. So Hunter Labrada, at the prejudging, Hunter Labrada had 20 points. At the finals, he had 20 points. His final score was 40, so the combination of the 2 points. His placing was 4th. Nick Walker, at prejudging, had 24, meaning that Hunter was already ahead of Nick at the prejudging. Now, at the finals, Nick had a score of 25, so a little bit worse than his score at prejudging by 1 point, so not too much, not that big of a difference. But Hunter Labrada had another score of 20, so the gap was even wider between Hunter and Nick at finals. So the final score for Nick was 49, separated by Hunter by almost 9 points. So you could say, looking at those scores, it's not like it was a 1, 2, 3 point decision. There was a significant gap between the 2 placings. So that being said, pose for pose, let's compare HD photos from the individual routines of Nick and Hunter from the finals. And not knowing which poses the judges gave to each guy, I'll give my opinion on who I would give the pose to, and at the end we'll add them up. And as we're going, you guys comment in the comments below who you would give each pose to. So let's start from the front double bicep pose. In my opinion, a very strong pose for both Nick and Hunter. Both of them have really good arms, specifically really good biceps. Both of them have really uniquely peaked biceps, and that's kind of the point of the pose, is to show off that attribute. So let's break it down. Let's start by focusing in on the most important point of this pose, the biceps. So if I'm looking at both Nick and Hunter, looking at just their biceps, who has the more clearly defined, separated biceps? Whose biceps pop the most in this pose? Who has the best tricep sweep under their bicep, the separation between the bicep and the tricep? I would say Hunter, even though Nick probably has the bigger arms and the freakier arms. In this pose, I think Hunter's biceps look the best, and that is the main point of this pose, is to show off the biceps. Now, that being said, take a look at the midsection. I think Nick's abs are much more defined than Hunter's abs, although Hunter has a much better V-taper than Nick, so that could kind of be a toss-up. I would say if you look at the legs, even though the separation in the quads is not necessarily a strong point for Nick, I gotta say, in this pose from the front, his quads look pretty deeply separated compared to Hunter's. In this particular picture, I don't know if Hunter just doesn't have enough oil on or what, but my eyes are drawn more to Nick's legs. So if you break down those 3 elements of the physique, let's call the midsection a toss-up, because you would give the V-taper to Hunter, you'd give the separation to Nick. Let's give Nick the legs from the front, but Hunter the biceps, the most important part of the pose, would give that to him. I would have to give this pose to Hunter. Now you let me know in the comments below who you would give this pose to. Now, next up, the most muscular pose. This, I feel, is a very strong pose for Nick, but he hits it 2 different ways. So we'll do one hand on the thigh and then one hand off, and then the hands clasp. So Nick hits both variations of this pose. Hunter, it looks like the pictures that I could find, only hit the one hand on thigh version of the most muscular. So we'll show that first, and then we'll show that compared to Nick's hands clasped most muscular. Now, it doesn't really matter which one you hit. You can do either one for this pose. So in the most muscular hands clasp, I think Nick takes this pose all day. This is one of his bread and butter shots. When you talk about what you're looking for in a most muscular, you're looking for a display of muscularity, and that's what Nick is. He's a mutant. He is a freak. He's a mass monster. That is where his fan base comes from. He is a guy that gives those hardcore bodybuilding fans what they want. And you can see all that in the most muscular pose. Definition in the abs, crazy round shoulders, crazy arms, crazy forearms. His legs look crazy, vascularity all over the place. He just looks like an absolute freak in this pose. Probably one of his most impressive poses in his arsenal. Hunter Labrada in his own right looks really good. He's got that crazy vascularity all throughout his chest when he hits that pose. Honestly, not a bad pose for Hunter, but I think overall you have to give this pose to Nick. So far that's 1-1. Front double to Hunter and most muscular to Nick. Now, next pose. Let's look at another front pose here. And this is probably one of Nick's weaker poses, the front lat spread. Probably not the strongest pose for Hunter either, but for Nick particularly, this is not one that really does him any favors, especially with his structure. So Nick from the front, really kind of the point of the front lat spread is to show the lats from the front. The width of the lats should be visible from that front shot. Now, if we're being honest, when we look at Nick in that pose, you can barely see his lats. It's not a flattering pose for him. Hunter, you can see his lats much more visible. You can see that V-taper effect that they're going for in that pose much more with Hunter's physique, with his structure. I think it's a much better pose for Hunter, and I think Hunter takes that pose for that reason. Really, it's a structural thing for Nick, and it's just not a pretty pose for him. And it doesn't really, like I said, he doesn't really pull off the point of that pose to show lat width and the V-taper with that lat flare from the front. So front lat we give to Hunter. So that's 2-1. Hunter is up. Now let's go to the side here. And this one I might let you guys decide because this to me is a bit of a toss-up. This to me is kind of a tie because they both hit this pose in a very impressive way in their own right. I love the way Nick hits this pose. He shows off his legs and his calves very well in this pose. He controls his waist, makes his waist look small. Obviously one of Nick's strong points. He's got massive arms. His triceps, the focus point of this shot, look great in this pose. And from head to toe, he shows off his entire side profile very well. That being said, he hits it differently than Hunter Labrada, who Hunter does a very good job of showing off his chest in this pose. You can see, again, that crazy trademark Hunter Labrada chest vascularity. Crazy deep horseshoe in the tricep for Hunter, but I think Nick's legs in the side shot look a bit more impressive, while Hunter's chest looks a bit more impressive. So I would say almost, the triceps themselves would be a toss-up. I would say Hunter's chest looks better in this pose. Hunter's serratus in the midsection area looks better, but Nick's legs, to me, look much more impressive from the side. So I would call this a toss-up. So you guys decide in the comments who takes this pose. So we're halfway there. That's 4 poses. We've given Hunter 2, Nick 1, and 1 a toss-up. Now, let's do another side pose here, the side chest. This one I think you got to give to Hunter. Like I said, the point of this pose is the chest. I think Hunter has a better chest than Nick. I think he does a better job of showing off his chest in this pose. He really shows off that side profile of his arms well, just the way he hits the pose. Hunter's posing is phenomenal. And his glutes, to me, his glute hamstring tie-in, it looks a little bit more feathered and detailed than Nick's in this specific pose. So I would give the side chest to Hunter. So now it's 3-1, Hunter and Nick, but we still got to do the back poses here, and we still got to decide that toss-up of the side tricep. In fact, we'll do a coin toss at the end of the video to decide. Now, back double bicep. This is where I think Nick makes up a little ground. I think Nick takes this pose. If you look specifically at that mid to lower lat area, Nick's back is much thicker and much denser in that area. His traps, to me, look thicker and denser. Rounder delts from the back. Bicep peaks look peakier from the back, if that's even a word. I prefer the way that Nick's striations and his hamstrings and glutes, they look deeper and more conditioned to me in this pose. I would give the back double bicep to Nick Walker over Hunter Labrada. So the back double to Nick, now it's 2-3, Hunter to Nick. Now let's go to another back pose. The rear lat spread. Now, the next one is a bit tricky, the rear lat spread. I couldn't find, for some reason, so most of these photos have been from NPC News Online, but I couldn't find on any website an individual photo of Nick hitting the rear lat spread. That being said, this photo from this call out, Nick is in the purple, Hunter is in the black. That's Ian on the end in the green and Bonac on the other side in the gold. This is the only comparison photo I could find, and this was on MD. And to me, it looks like Nick has, again, more density and more detail in the back from that lat spread pose. And again, if you look at the glutes and hamstrings, it looks to be a little bit more dialed in to me, giving Nick, and this is what I think, you know, Hunter's really, his biggest weak point, I think, is his back. I don't think Hunter would disagree with that. I think most bodybuilding fans would agree that that's probably the main weak point in Hunter's armor is his back. So I think I would give Nick that rear lat spread, but with the caveat, it's not the best. It's not the best photo to go off of, but I think just looking at the detail and the density that I can see from Nick and that I'm not seeing from Hunter, especially like I said, in that mid to lower lat area in the center of the back, I would give it to Nick. Now Hunter's width looks pretty good. He's got a pretty wide back. But Nick's, to me, looks like there's more detail there, more density there. And I believe Nick even said in an interview he would refer to himself as the more complete bodybuilder. He was more complete than Hunter at the Olympia. Now, the final pose that we have to look at here today, the abs and thighs. That is the 8th pose. Now, Hunter hits it. He hits the side variation, and Nick hits it straight on from the front. So we've got a little bit of an apples and oranges comparison to do here. And honestly, it's a tough one to decide. I think that Hunter looks very, very impressive in this pose. I really like his variation of the abs and thighs. His serratus, his abs from the side look very impressive. A lot of detail there. You can see cross striations in his quads. And again, this is another one where we have to go to the comparison for Nick because I didn't see a single shot of him from his individual routine hitting an abs and thighs. And in that comparison shot, it's a little bit hard to tell because Hunter's kind of hitting it from the side and Nick is hitting it straight on. And it's not the highest resolution image. But I would say as far as the detail in the abs, the serratus muscle, the cross striations in the quads, I mean, Nick is not really necessarily known for having the greatest detail or separation in his legs. And I think it's a really good pose for Hunter as far as showing off his leg separation and detail. It's a great pose for Hunter as far as showing off that conditioning from the side. Again, it's kind of a little bit of a toss-up for me because it's very apples and oranges, but I think who looks better in this pose, even though they're hitting it in different ways, I would go with Hunter on this one, so that would make it 4-3. And I'll flip a coin, heads, for the side tricep, I'll flip a coin heads to Hunter and tails to Nick. And I just flipped it, and Nick gets the side tricep. So that would make it 4-4. So I've got Hunter with the front double bicep, the front lat spread, the side chest, and the abs and thighs. And I've got Nick with the most muscular, the back double bicep, the rear lat spread, and the toss-up was the side tri, but I'd give that to Nick. So in my opinion, it is extremely close between the two. And if you look at the video footage of Nick and Hunter, I could honestly see an argument for either one of these two guys winning. I think it literally is a coin toss. I would have had no problem with Nick in 4th or vice versa. I think the main reason this was so controversial is because Nick had such a hell of a year. The New York Pro win, the Arnold Classic win, just a crazy meteoric rise to success. I think the fan base that he accumulated on that journey wanted to see him do well at the Olympia, and so they should. But maybe next year things will be different. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. How did you score it? Which poses would you give to who and why? And if you think Nick should have beaten Hunter, explain why in the comments down below. Now, either way, make sure you leave a like on the video. It helps out a lot. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Click that bell notification icon. And as always, I love you guys. Appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power, signing out.